Peter Aldous.
Thank you very much, Sir George. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair. I congratulate the Honourable Member for Motherwell and Wishaw for securing this debate and setting out, I think, in a comprehensive detail, the evidence base for an energy social tariff. I also thank the Backbench Business Committee for granting the debate. Sir George, everyone should have access to a warm and secure home. For the majority of people, this will be provided through the marketplace, though our energy market is imperfect and invariably, at all times, in the interest of fairness, there is a need for government intervention. Before the current cost of living crisis, this intervention was provided predominantly through the energy price cap, which, whilst not perfect, did perform an important role. That energy price cap has been increased today, though from what we've heard from the Honourable Lady, and I think from the feedback that I'm receiving, this will be of limited relevance to many of those who are struggling with their bills. So, George, the dramatic increase in energy prices, primarily caused by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, has necessitated a different approach, and government, to their credit, over the past 18 months to 2 years, have stepped in with more direct support. My right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, continued with this strategy yesterday in his autumn statement, and in particular, I welcome the increase in the local housing allowance. I've also heard, as the Honourable Lady has outlined, there is some concern as to whether or not he has done enough. I think he has tried, and I hope he has done enough, but in many ways I'm on tenterhooks to see whether he actually has. That said, it is clear that in the medium to long term, and when I talk medium term, realistically now I'm talking 24, 25 onwards, a different approach is required so as to protect the most vulnerable. The energy price cap on its own has run its course, and it is thus appropriate to consider a social tariff which can provide longer-term, more targeted support for the most vulnerable households. The fact that we need such support is clear from the feedback, from the evidence base we've heard from the Honourable Lady, and from the feedback that we all receive in our constituencies from those who come into our surgeries, often with heartbreaking stories of the challenges that they're facing. These messages are reinforced by the briefings that we've all received ahead of this debate, and as the Honourable Lady said, we've received a great many of them from such organisations as Citizens Advice, MenCap, Marie Curie, the RNIB, the Cystic Fibrosis Trust, and Scope, all of whom have one thing in common. Their clients, the people they look after, the people they support, the people whose needs they articulate to us as members of Parliament, they are the most vulnerable, they are the people who are most challenged at this current time. So, George, I think it's also important to thank those churches and other faith groups, charities and volunteers, aided by local councils right across the country, who have reached out and who are supporting those struggling with their energy bills. We now, I think, have a network of warm rooms which have sprung up across the UK, and from my perspective, this shows British society operating at its very best. So, George, from my perspective, as I said, the case for a social tariff is proven, and it's now necessary to move on to what I would suggest is the more complicated and difficult challenge of how to design it and then introduce it. Now, we've received a great many representations ahead of this debate. The one I found actually was quite particularly interesting and relevant was the report of the Social Market Foundation from March of this year, a report titled Fairer, Warmer and Cheaper. And I would suggest that is a good starting point for the discussion as to the form that a social energy tariff might take. The Social Market Foundation concluded, I think as we've already heard, that the current system of policies for supporting households with high energy bills is inadequate for an era of high energy bills, which is, I fear, likely to continue for the foreseeable future. They recommend a social tariff arrangement whereby households spending an excessive proportion of their income on energy bills should receive targeted financial support to reduce those bills in the form of a social tariff. They also point out that the precise form of the social tariff does warrant further consideration, but their own analysis suggests that the most progressive and fiscally efficient form is a lump sum payment. So, George, I shall return in a minute to the precise form that the tariff might take. The Social Market Foundation believe that the social tariff should be funded from general taxation. That is a view that the Honourable Lady has articulated, and it is a conclusion and a view with which I concur. They also, quite rightly, emphasise the need at all times, at the same time that we might introduce an energy social tariff, to significantly expand the energy company obligation scheme so as to improve the energy efficiency of homes. As we've heard, we have a very leaky housing stock. We have made some progress in improving it, but there is a long way to go. It is absolutely vital that we are not diverted from this pressing and crucial task. And we must significantly step up our efforts in this regard, with funding for the ECO continuing to be raised via on-bill levies. So, George, as I've mentioned, the issue on which there is some dispute and where there is a need for discussion is the form that the tariff should take, whether it should be a social tariff or what is known as a block tariff. This, Sir George, is a complicated debate, and I'm not going to go into it in any great detail now, and actually that's why we do need the consultation which I'm going to plead for in a minute and which the Honourable Lady has already asked for. But the National Energy Action, who do great work in this field, their conclusion, they favour a social tariff as they believe a block tariff is distributionally unfair and will create very vulnerable users. The counter-argument in favour of a block tariff is that it would incentivise energy efficiency, which, as I mentioned, should be our long-term goal and objective, and is a challenge that we must not shirk from. So, in conclusion, whilst, as I've mentioned, I'm not going to go into any details to the design of the tariff, what we do need to be doing is getting on straight away and talking about it. And as the Honourable Lady has said, and it's ironic, we're having this debate a day after this year's autumn statement, but if we go back a year to the autumn statement of 2022, my honourable friend, the Chancellor, did undertake, and I'll quote his words, to develop a new approach to consumer protection in energy markets, which will apply from April 2024 onwards. This commitment was reiterated in the April just gone by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, who set out the intention to consult this summer. Now, this is a very important as well as an incredibly complicated task, And we do need to be getting on with it as quickly as possible. April 2024 is 6 months away, and I'm not sure that that provides us with sufficient time to have an energy tariff in place for 2024-25. I think we do need to be getting, I know there are going to be other distractions, but to an awful lot of vulnerable people, it is vital that we put what I would describe as that longer-term arrangement in place, rather, and I'm not begrudging the support that has been given, the sticking plaster approach that of short-term support. That longer-term approach is so absolutely vital. And in my summing up, I would just be grateful if in her summing up, my honourable friend, the Minister, who does great job in this work in this particular area, whether she can provide us with details of when the consultation is going to get underway. You know, time really is of the essence. We're not going to have it in place, no way, this winter, but we do need it in place for 2024-2025. Thank you very much, Sir George.
Steve McCabe.
Thank you.